We have the Lord Mayor, Alderman Thomas, myself. Okay, we need to co-opt the deputy. Someone move to co-opt the deputy.
On the committee, Chairman. It's hard to remember that, but I'm actually on the committee.
Sorry, it was Deputy Lord Mayor. I said Lord Mayor, it's actually Deputy Lord Mayor. I sincerely apologise. So I've got to co-opt the Lord Mayor. Sorry, I was looking at the sheet and it gave me sorry about that. So someone move to co-opt the Lord Mayor, please. Alderman Thomas, all those in favour? Well, anyone against? There's no one against. The Lord Mayor's co-opted. So confirmation of the minutes. Someone move. Anyone want to put their hands up? Alderman Thomas. Anyone against? There's no one against. The item's carried. Any consideration of supplementary items? No consideration of supplementary items. Any pecuniary interest? No pecuniary interest. Any transfer agenda items? No transfer agenda items. Reports. Meeting schedule proposed changes. It's in regards to changing the meeting times at the later time of the year. So, Councillor, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Move that. Oh,
I'm happy to move it, Chairman.
Okay, it's moved by the Deputy. Any discussion? Been no discussion. Anyone against? Item is carried. Next item is committee meetings for 2021. Someone like to move? Put a hand up.
moved.
Moved by the Lord Mayor. Any discussion? There'll be no discussion. The item's carried. City of Hobart local preference procurement policy. Anyone got any? Anyone like to move the recommendation?
I'm happy to move it, Chair, and I know this was one of your initiatives. I'm just wondering, have you got any thoughts on, was this what you were envisaging, or is there?
Look, to my point of view, I've read the report. I'm quite comfortable with that. At the end of the day, it was an idea to go up, and I think the officers have done a great job with it. And to my point of view, you know, what they're recommending, I'm quite comfortable with. At the end of the day, we might envisage what we would like in our minds, but sometimes we've got to look at what's also something that assists the officers. So I'm quite comfortable. At the end of the day, you know, I think the point has been made about procuring as much as we can local.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Alderman Thomas.
Yes, look, I'd just like to ask through you, Chair, to the officers, what research took place to arrive at 10%, and where else is it used, and has it ever been challenged to your knowledge, whoever prepared the main research through to Mr. Short, I imagine?
Mr. Short.
Chair, Ms. McDonnell is on the line, and she and her team have prepared the policy, so I'll get her to answer that question through you, Chair.
Through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. In preparing this policy, it was something that we'd actually been working on for quite some time. We're actually part of the Capital City Procurement Network, and many of the councils, particularly the large capital city councils, have quite good policies around this. In respect to the minimum of 10% weighting, that's actually quite common, commonly used at councils interstate. So research has shown that that it is quite commonly used and widely accepted.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, anyone against that? Alderman Thomas, could you put your hand down, please? I know you second they put the motion forward. If you can put your hand down, be much. Thank you. Okay, anyone against this? There'll be no one against. The item is carried. Annual review on investment portfolio as of the 30th of September.
Move that be received and noted, Chairman.
Moved and received and noted by the deputy. Any discussion? Be no discussion. And anyone against? Be no one against. The item's carried. Lease renewal, South Hobart Community Centre. Anyone like to
I'll move that.
moved by Alderman Thomas. Any discussion?
No, it's good to see that it's open and being used. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic as well. No other. Okay. Anyone against the item? The item's carried. We go now to item 7, which is a notice of motion. Alderman Thomas.
Yeah, look, thanks, Chair. Look, I bring this motion on the basis that, Chair, as you've said many times, we're in a very exceptional period. We have a forecast debt level of $12 million for this financial year. I think it's prudent as the elected officials that we call for an account of what we're holding in terms of assets that may be surplus to our needs or may be better used in terms of market mechanisms for carrying the debt or carrying costs associated with those buildings. We've probably all got one or two council assets we can both think of, or we can think of that might fit in this category, but we've often had this argument, the debate in terms of, will we sell, for example, a council centre and then lease it back, or will we not sell it? We've never come up with what is currently available from my research interstate market mechanisms that use the assets, including plant and infrastructure or plant and equipment, as equity as opposed to debt for the purposes of financing up front, so that 65% in some instances of the capital value or the value of that item is paid to the council up front, with a term not dissimilar to a mortgage term, but a 15-year term of repayment at a certain number of basis points, something like 4%, which is expensive in the marketplace today, but may well not be in 1 year's time or in 6 years' time. So it allows us to retain, Chair, ownership of the asset, but utilise it in a better way. So what I'm hoping from this report is the General Manager will come back with a report on all of the salient assets of the city that might be and that would go down to fixed installations, roadways, the works, long-term rentals that we're involved with as renting our property out, and look to see whether or not any of those assets might be worth considering for sale, some for sale and lease back, some retained without any change. But most importantly, this new market mechanism, or this more contemporary market mechanism, looked at in the light of our current asset structure. I couldn't let this item go past without referring to, for example, to the Dorney residence on Porters Hill, which I estimate is probably one of the most exquisite places in Hobart. Its location is unbelievable, and notwithstanding we continually get told of access problems, if we were to sell that property on the open market, one would expect well in excess of $2.5 to $3 million. And when we're looking at a $12 million debt situation in the current budget, Chair, I don't think we can not do this exercise. So I recommend it to the Council.
Thank you, Alderman Thomas. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Chairman. Through you to Mr. Short or Ms. McDonnell. I know that we're going through a review of where we stand in the COVID situation closer to the middle of the financial year. Is this not already taken up in that kind of review?
Chair, through you, certainly it's part of it. I think where Alderman Thomas is going is perhaps a slightly longer timeframe. The work that ELT and the staff will be doing towards the end of December will be a mid-year review for this financial year, so we can get a sense of how our budgeting forecast is travelling. You'll see in the note there at the bottom of the notice of motion from the General Manager that certainly as part of a medium to longer term plan for COVID recovery, we certainly do need to consider all options. And we certainly flagging in terms of what Alderman Thomas is suggesting, looking at assets and potential sales, that has to be on the table in terms of a recovery plan. But I guess, Chair, to be quite specific, it won't form a strong part of the mid-year review. The mid-year review is really about operationally how we're travelling. This is much more about, if I understand Alderman Thomas correctly, that medium to longer term recovery process. But correct me if I'm wrong, Alderman Thomas.
Look, certainly mine's a strategic review of the critical element of ownership versus sale, lease back, new forms of market mechanism. What I understood was what you were saying was quite right, that the midterm budget review was not about asset sales, it was about our position financially at that point and our risk exposure. This is a greater element, and this is an element that I think is critical to our future or our sustainability.
Yeah, and just following on, and I don't know whether it's just in relation to assets and underutilised assets that you're considering, Alderman Thomas, but through you, Chair, to Alderman Thomas, is it something that we can consider with working with other organisations, such as for social enterprise or the social good, in relation to when we do identify those assets as well?
I think do you want to finish, Alderman Burnett? Sorry.
No, that's no. You go. Through you, Chair.
Look, it was posh. It's contemplated that this would be the asset X or asset 110. Are we utilising, what's its value, what's its current maintenance cost or its holding cost? I'm sorry to do this, but I'll go back to the Dorney House. We've held it for 7 or 8 years. We've held it for many years since a previous council acquired it as part of bicentenary funds, which allowed Porterhill to be left in its natural state. We paid for maintenance. We've got I believe, a caretaker there. It's not being used. It's not part of our strategic plan. It's sitting there, and it's a jewel in a crown of real estate in Tasmania. And here we are sitting on it, and we're looking at a $10 million loss for the year. It just that, for example, I mean, if yes, certainly, Councillor Burnett, if there was, for example, if there was assets that we didn't need anymore and we're able to better balance our financials, and a social enterprise was able to get a federal grant, for example, or a state grant to take over that asset, I think that's a wonderful idea. I mean, I don't think we should dismiss anything, but this was really a cold, hard look at our assets. And instead of asking successive councils, will we sell this or retain this, because usually a polarised view, this new area of market mechanism to actually retain ownership, but actually receive a heap of the equity up front, including rental income up front if necessary for long-term rentals. It's an idea, a mechanism used in other states and at the local government level, but what you're talking about could easily be included in any report back.
Thank you.
Lord Mayor, you look like you want to speak, but you take your mute off, please. Lord Mayor, mute off.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I had sort of the same question. I think it's really sensible for any council to that's got property to think, to go to certain points in time and go, okay, let's have a good look at it. Let's think about, are we utilising this to the best strategic use for the city? But that might be better utilisation or a different utilisation rather than sales. And I just, but it might, it may be sales too. But I just wondered whether, Alderman Thomas, you might consider a slight amendment to sort of reflect that, to say, so in your first sentence, you've got the General Manager be requested to complete an analysis of possible asset sales. Just wondering whether after the word analysis, it could have analysis of better strategic use of, or possible asset sales and then and or. So it's really just adding the words better strategic use of. So
I think it's an excellent idea, because it might be that we're underutilising a particular area, and when it comes up and someone says, well, look, if we're not using it, let's get rid of it and save the ratepayer, somebody else might get up and say, but look, I've always wanted to use this for a different reason. And
yeah, for a service or... Yeah, because we just want to make sure that we're not wasting. If an asset is being used well to meet a strategic goal, it may well be that we want to hang on to it, but we want some advice on better utilisation. I mean, I do think of the tennis centre, for example, which is one that really feels that it'll be. I mean, I guess we're always going to own that, but it does feel a bit like it's a beautiful site, that beautiful sporting facility that needs a lot of care but is really world class, and I just love some advice about how to get a better deal for that without having to wait for the government grants that are never going to turn up. So yeah, I think it's sensible to do this work. The only question I have, I guess, through you to the acting general manager, is just I presume this is quite specialised sort of work. We would have to probably get a really someone who's done property work for other councils or something to do this, would we, rather than it being internal?
Through you, Chair. Absolutely, Lord Mayor. Part of the recovery program we're looking at, we've already engaged Wise, Lord and Ferguson to support us in some thinking. Whether they have the wherewithal to add value here, or whether we have to subcontract or use a different firm. But you're quite right. I think we would be looking at some external support around this.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I'd just like to add to that, Lord Mayor. I was going to sort of interrupt while you were putting forward your points, because there's some points that I want to add to it as well. And look, I agree. We've got to look at things in a strategic manner, and I fully support the strategic approach. But and there are properties that I believe we do own that really have no long-term strategic value to this council. And I don't want to pick on the Dorney House. I think the Dorney House is one prime example that it's one of the most underutilised properties we own, and it's got a huge value. That's why I'd like to add some points as well, and hopefully the Alderman Thomas will add them in. And it's a little bit relevant to what you're saying, Lord Mayor. I think what we need to ensure that we understand is use to value. Meaning, is it a parcel of land? What use does it have to us? What's its value? And what's its future potential? Now, there'll be a lot of parcels of land that we own that we've probably owned for up to 10 years that we're never going to ever use or want to add value, and those things we've got to evaluate. And it's not just, say, land, it's any property we own. So, and I think a prime example is the Dorney House. Its value's X. What use are we getting out of it, and how much money does it cost us to maintain for that little bit of use that we get out of it? So I'll make the points first, Alderman Thomas, and then maybe you might sort of add the points I want to add in. It's actually also a percentage of value to our return. Now, Alderman Thomas has mentioned the city centre. Now, I don't know what the value of the city centre is, but what would be the capital return on the city centre? Or in some way, we don't know that because we're the landlords there. But what we should be looking at is what properties have we got. And I'm not going into, I'm talking about more commercial rather than community-based. I understand the community-based is a little bit different. I'm talking about more on the commercial side. What's the commercial value of some of our commercially owned properties, and what's our return there? Now, if we're not getting a good return, why should we be in the commercial market if we're not getting a commercial return on a commercial property? So we need to understand what our percentage factor is on return of any of our commercial properties. And then lastly, what we need to do is and this more reflects the centre that we own there on what is the percentage of the rent to capital. In other words, if we sold the city centre, right, what rental would we have to pay against what the capital that we're going to receive for a sale over a period of time? My philosophy has always been if you own a property, in particular commercial property, and if you sold that commercial property and your rental was going to be far outweighed by the capital value, well, you've got to really consider whether or not it's a smart idea to sell. So those 3 points need to be part of the overall evaluation of where we go. So I would say if Alderman Thomas would add them as a part 2, is use to value, percentage of value to commercial return, and then percentage of rent to capital. So at least that way there we understand that, okay, this particular property is a commercial property. It's giving us 2%. What's the going rate? The going rate's 7 or 8%. Maybe we either have got to reevaluate whether or not we put it on the commercial market or sell it. And to my point of view, if we're not getting a commercial return, I think they're the ones that you're better off selling. Alderman Thomas, are you happy to add them as a part 2? Do you understand what I'm trying to say there?
Yes, look, I think so the motion becomes 1, which is the paragraphs there.
Yeah.
And number 2 is as part of 1, the general manager, and then perhaps you and Mr. Short can agree the final wording so that we picked up your concerns. They're good points. I think I think this is a critical review through you to Mr. Short. I think it's one that we need to get underway because the holding cost of a $10 million debt, I mean, let's face it, Alderman Zuko, when the budget first came in with the pandemic impact, you rightly said we need this returned within X period of time, and you called for savings. Well, this is probably a next step, and one that I would like to think would come back no longer than 6 months from here, because if we take all our pipes and our bridges and our culverts, etc., which are also usable in this market mechanism example I used, we still then get to a certain number of fixed assets. So we haven't got, I mean, we're probably going to exclude the town hall, so and possibly the city hall. So it's not a huge job for the right consultant who is giving us the best advice, and I think it'll be well worth the exercise. So yeah, except one.
Okay, thank you for closing off, Alderman Thomas. Anyone voting against this? Sorry,
just a question, if I may, before you take the vote.
Absolutely.
Just in relation, like I guess we need some sort of idea of how much all of this is going to cost as well. I guess the more complicated information you try and get out of something, the greater it's going to cost, particularly if we're doing a consultant. Like we're getting information from a consultant, so it would be good. I guess this will be going up to council to have a bit of an idea of how much things might cost.
Alderman Thomas, you're comfortable to sort of get something back in regards to potential cost? I think before we go forward, I think this is calling for a report. We need a report first to go forward with the potential consultants and costs. I think that'd be appropriate. So Alderman Thomas, if you just add the component that's part of the report, the general manager comes back with a cost factor as well.
Of course, not a problem.
Okay. All right. Anyone against the motion? No one against. The item's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, next item is committee action status report. Someone like to move, receive and note? Deputy Lord Mayor, thank you. Anyone got anything to say? No, the item's carried. Okay, now we go to questions without notice. Anyone got a question without notice? No one's jumping up and down. No questions without notice. Thank you very much. Someone move to go into closed.
I think it's responses to questions without notice.
Sorry.
Yeah, Chairman, item 9.1.
Oh, sorry, I jumped one. I apologise.
Happy to move.
Sorry, I jumped one. Sorry about that. So responses, questions without notice, moved by Deputy Lord Mayor. Anyone against? Okay, we've already, I'll go to questions without notice again. No questions without notice. Sorry about that, I missed one. And closed portion of the meeting. Someone moved to go on the closed.
I'll move that, Chair, but I'm going to have to leave. So
Thank you. Moved by the Lord Mayor. All those in